Hello, welcome back to the studio. Today I want to show you how to create a spiral zine. And I want to share this project because I think it's a super easy zine to create and also one that looks really impressive. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So I got this idea initially because I had seen a few fun accordion style zines like this, specifically this one from a creator called Ava Poof. So I wanted to put my own spin on it and talk you guys through the process of how you can make your very own spiral zine. So the first step is to, of course, gather your materials. For this zine, you only need a few simple things. So obviously you need paper and a printer, whether that's paper that you print yourself or something you get done at a local print shop. The next thing you'll need is some way to cut your paper. So of course you can use scissors or you can use a craft knife. And if you're using a craft knife, of course, having a ruler and a cutting mat nearby is going to be super handy. And the last thing you'll need is some glue to adhere the different sections of pages together. So let's start with the first step of this zine, which is planning. And to plan a zine like this, I always find it really helpful to have a mini version of what I'm working on. So the first thing you'll need for this zine is a square. And you can make that square in Adobe Illustrator like I did, or you can use a free program like Canva or Kittl. This square is going to be a page. So you need to decide how big you want your square. This is the size that I made mine. And I basically figured out on Adobe Illustrator how many squares it would make to make a simple spiral shape. So for me, that looked something like this, and that was going to be my total number of pages. For the zine that I referenced at the beginning of this video, it was a lot more squares and I think a bit smaller. So you can really adapt this to how many pages you want your zine to be. And from there, I made a little mini version of my zine. And this was just to check that the general layout and everything was going to be okay. So I printed it like this. You can see it's all folded up in this little paper clip or binder clip. But I just created a version like this, and I went ahead and drew out like where I wanted the content. And as for what goes inside this zine, I think this is a great opportunity to use stuff from your archive. So for me, as you guys have seen before on my channel, I've been doing these little gel pen color plots with my pen plotter. So I have a lot of little illustrations that are made with gel pens. And I thought it would be really fun to kind of catalog these into different color palettes or color combination ideas, kind of almost inspired by this Japanese color dictionary, but with a little spin on it. So that was my idea. But for you, maybe you have a collection from your sketchbook, or maybe you have photos from a trip, or maybe you have some writing or poetry that you want to combine with images. I think this is a really fun way to just put those things that you've been saving and scraps that you've collected or made over the last little while together into something a little more cohesive. So for me, since I was using these drawings that I had made, I went ahead and scanned all of those in. And once I knew that my little format was correct, I went ahead and laid out where I wanted all the content. For me, it was pretty simple because I just kind of wanted to label the colors, give information on the pens I had used, and then also have like an index in the back where I listed all of the different ink pens and the different brands and stuff that I had used throughout the zine. I made all of my layout on this like big spiral artboard. And then when I was done with that, I figured out how I could print the different panels. So basically for the construction of this zine, all you really need to do is have areas that overlap and that you're going to glue together. So I needed to have some overlapping areas. And if this sounds a little complicated, and you don't want to customize it to yourself, I've made my own template and shared it at a link below in the description. So you can also just download my version and play around with that and make your spiral zine for yourself without trying to figure any of this out. But for me, since I knew I wanted my final page to be A3, I basically figured out how many squares I could generally print. And that seemed to be like between 4 and 5. was the maximum, and also accounting for the overlapping part. So each section had around 3 or 4 actual pages, and then usually like one blank square that was going to be glued, and so it didn't need to have any content on it. And so you can see these are like the final strips that I printed out. After I had all of those prepared on the computer, I went ahead and made one test print just on my regular printer before risograph printing. I figured out there were a couple areas where my margin needed to be fixed, and I was able to adjust those a little bit before printing the final project. And when those are all ready, I organized all my layers via Spectrolite, or you can also organize them via Photoshop with CMYK color separations. I basically just replaced CMYK with different riso inks. But if you don't know how to use Photoshop and you want to make a faux CMYK image, Spectrolite is a specific program you can use for riso printing that will help you prepare CMYK-ish images, and it's really nice because you can kind of get a preview of how your image will look. I went ahead and printed all my pages out, and I ended up with pages that looked like this. So these pages I just needed to cut, and this was a little bit tricky because I had some areas where the pages are vertical and some sections of the page where they're horizontal. So I needed to be quite careful to remember where those were. It was really helpful to just have a blank template next to me that I could look at and kind of reference to remind myself where to cut and in what order. So if you're a little confused, I recommend just having your blank template nearby and using that as a guide while you cut. So I cut all my strips out and then I folded them, and in sections where I had even pages, that was really easy. So if I had like 2 or 4 pages, I could just fold in half and then in half again. But in areas where I had maybe 5 or 3, I had to be a little more careful. And in this case, it's good to just measure and maybe score with some kind of object like a bone folder or a ruler or something, and then folded. So that's my recommendation for when you're folding the odd numbered pages. And when that was all done, all I had to do was glue the pages together. So you can kind of see where these squares overlap. There would be a blank page underneath and then the printed part on top. And I tried to just space these evenly and just make sure they were as flush as possible. But sometimes you might have a little paper overlap where maybe your trimming wasn't perfect. And in that case, you can just simply take a ruler and a knife and kind of cut that part off. And you end up with this very cute spiral zine. So as I mentioned before, the zine I made functions as a kind of color wheel or color palette guide to these different gel pen combinations. It was also really fun to see just like how the gel pens came out when they were riso printed and how those look different from how they look in the original prints. So I hope this gave you some good ideas. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and you can download the template that I made in the links down below as well. See you next time. Bye.